Alright folks, today we are back in the shop working on Mo. We did a little bit of stuff off camera that I kind of just spaced videoing, but we've got our water pump mounted here. It's just welded to a tab on this bar. We've got our ORB hose fittings built. These both go into the radiator and then up to our water pump. They're just a bunch of pie cuts on some 1.5 inch aluminum tube to some 12 ORB fittings down here so they still unthread with O-rings and all that stuff. We've got our coils somewhat mounted over here. I'm not 100% that I love this location, but it keeps them out of the way and you can't really see them. There's going to be an alternator right here in the short future, so I've got to cut these pieces of all thread down still and add another bracket over here. We've also got our cooling return line all situated with a piece of 16 AN, a straight, and a 30, little coupler. Everything worked out pretty good. Today we are probably going to start working on our dump tubes for our wastegates over here. I think I'm going to try and run this one back over and down. This one's just going to go basically straight down. They're going to be tied together so they don't rattle and all that stuff. And then we are probably going to start looking into the wiring. I've been majorly procrastinating that because I hate wiring. It's not that I'm bad at it or anything. I just really don't like doing it. I always end up with murdered fingertips and headache, and it's just not fun. I'm much more of a build it with metal kind of person, not a wiring kind of person. Like I said, I can do it, it's just not my forte. So we'll give you some updates here in a little bit on how all that's going. I've got to start figuring out my pinouts and all that stuff. We've got our paperwork here. Under this is the PDM, so I'm going to go through and allocate what goes where, and then start figuring out all of the wiring. We've got our ECU plate here. I pulled the dash back out, but our ECU plate there, don't worry, it doesn't sit crooked. It's just loosely sitting in there, but we got a wire from the ECU. The PDM sits over here. That's our power wire for the PDM. We're going to go down through this hole up into the engine bay for all of our injectors and our sensors and stuff. There's going to be a nice fancy boot right here, then 90 degrees over. It's going to run behind the cylinder head, go to our cam sensor, all of our other baloney. We're going to have back pressure, EGTs. I want 2 banks of injectors, so I'm going to wire it to a Deutsch connector that is basically dead on the secondary side so that I can simply add another rail when that time comes. Everything's wired. I just got to do some stuff in the ECU and then that'll be good. Alright, so we've got our first dump tube tacked up here. I'll go ahead and show you how that fits. As you can see, it comes out of our wastegate, down past the control arm, over along the frame rail here, dumps out that way. It's pretty close, but we've got solid motor mounts on the way, so that shouldn't be much of a problem. I can always wiggle it over just a little bit after I get it welded out on the V-band. Now our next one is going to get from this gate, we got to get put back on. It's going to run parallel down to that one. Probably have a bracket down in here somewhere to hold them together. That way they don't make a bunch of tuning fork shits going on. Then weld them both up, get them both back installed, and then move on to the wiring. Yay! Alright folks, we got our second dump tube all tacked up, set on there. Show you what this looks like. We got both of them in there. They come through nice and tight to the frame rail, down. We've got it jacked up just so I can show you the bottom side. Use a jack stand, folks. Your life, or even your legs for that matter, are always in danger when a vehicle is just sitting on a jack. Do yourself a favor and just always use one. It's not worth it. But down here, you can see we've got some kind of over-under action going on there. And up there, we've got plenty of clearance in between the bell housing. A little bit in between the frame rail, but that'll be all right. I'm going to go ahead and get these pulled off, weld them all up. I'll show you guys what they look like when I'm done welding, and then we just got to build a tab to hold those together, and all that should be happy. All right, we got our wastegate dump tubes completely finished up here. We got our tab here, a little M6 stainless bolt that'll hold them together. That way they don't rattle. They're pretty solid. Pretty happy with how that turned out. I also forgot one really cool thing to show you guys that we're putting on this. I'm not sure if this is the first Mitsubishi motor that's going to have one of these. They're very, very, very common in basically everything that makes a bunch of horsepower in V8 land. We've got one for a Honda as well, but this is what's called a Clearview filter. You can go to this website right here if you want to learn a bunch more about it. These are super, super cool. Basically, what these do is they allow you to see the status of your oil at all times when the engine is running. And then if you ever have a doubt that there's some particulate in your oil or that some bad stuff's going on, you can shut the motor off, put air into this fitting right here, and it blows all the oil down through that filter you see in there. And any particulate or gunk that you have in your oil system is going to be trapped on top of that filter. So no more cutting oil filters open, no more getting your hands super gross or cutting a filter open, and no more guessing if the oil needs changed or if something's going on. That will tell you every single time. No doubts, no lies, it is what it is. These are super cool products. They've got big inlet outlet fittings on them. They use a big block Chevy oil filter, so it flows a ton of oil. They have an extra port somewhere on here. I forgot where it is already. Right there for your oil pressure lines, whether that be a turbo, supercharger, whatever you want to do with it. These are all billet aluminum made right here in Spokane by a guy named Mike. Again, if you need any more information or if you're curious about getting one of these yourself, that is his website. These are super cool. This one also has their primer. It's called a Mighty Prime. This is helpful for when you do oil changes or if the car sits for a long time. What you do is you put a drill on top of this guy, you spin it up, and it gives the entire system pressure, gets everything flowing and nice and lubricated so you don't have to start it dry. I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to put this thing yet. We don't exactly have a ton of space left. I was partly thinking right up in here, but I don't necessarily love that it's right in front of the front tire. It may end up kind of right in here. That way, if something does end up happening with the oil filter or any of the lines, it goes into my drip pan that comes down here. Again, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to look at some ideas and kind of see what we have for space while also keeping the intercooler piping, the intake manifold, some of our wiring stuff, and the eventuality that this gets a strut right here. We also have to keep in mind that it would be nice to have a catch can up here somewhere. I'm not 100% married to putting it up here. I might put it in the back, just a big burn down box with a fucking canopy chimney. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So instead of wiring, I'm going to work on getting that Clearview dealio mounted up so I can see what fittings I have to order, get all that stuff purchased, and then I also need to buy a downpipe flange so I can get the 4-inch out the fender. Still waiting on a couple sensors for the wiring stuff anyways, so I'm not in a huge hurry. I do need to get it done though, because that's one of the last major hurdles to this thing running. Since the truck's in the air, I figured I might as well show you the bottom side of it. None of it's very pretty, but that's the Turbo 400. There's the trans brake solenoid. These are my cooler hoses. That is my converter charge pressure sensor. This is the little overflow that I built so it doesn't puke fluid out when it's hot. This has, again, a PTC twin turbo LS converter mated to a GM. I think this is a TCI 153 tooth flex plate. There you can see our big giant crank adapter and our bell housing adapter and our oil leak. Sick. I'm hoping now that this doesn't have exhaust all down here where we have literally no space. It looks really big right here, but I promise you there's less than 3 inches in this gap. And the downpipe used to come all the way down through here, back into there, and they had a muffler back there. So this part of the floor, from what my wife has told me, used to get very, very, very toasty after about 30 or 45 minutes. And I'm hoping not having the exhaust right here anymore kind of helps out with the trans temp because it doesn't love to stay cool. As you can see, it's all very ugly stock stuff up here. I cut the cross member here and built my own removable unit because unfortunately the reality, in my opinion, of drag racing a small cubic inch motor, or very much so any 4-cylinder, is that at the level and extremeness that I have to put this motor through, it doesn't survive super long. It doesn't necessarily die, but every couple months or every couple seasons, we do have to take the motor apart, pull the pan off, go through, roll some bearings into it, check valve spring tension, kind of make sure everything's happy, because with the amount of abuse that these things have to go through to be able to keep up with the V8 cars that are making, I don't know, 1,200-1,300 horsepower is absolutely phenomenal. They're very high maintenance. I think that's probably why a lot of people don't do it, but again, I'm a junkie for that badge, and this is probably one of my favorite engines ever built. So we're going to continue chasing the dream. I will update you guys as soon as we have the Clearview filter mounted and see what we're going to do from there. All right, so we've got our Clearview filter mounted here. I decided to put it here because it kind of takes up the void that was up in this area. This side is going to have a big old tube that feeds our turbocharger, and it gives us clear access to our little air chuck fitting so we can blow all the air down in the filter, check if there's any debris in the oil or if anything catastrophic is happening. There's also a very big space down here where I can change the oil without anything really getting soaked. We have to change our oil filter with this little guy right here. This has the in and out to go to our new filter. Get some fittings and hoses on the way, and we'll get that plumbed. Our hoses are going to run from back here up along this little front cross member in front of our sway bar here on up to our filter. I'm still not 100% decided if I want to put our oil pressure for our turbo out of here or just keep it simple, short little line, and keep it over here. I spent a couple hours last night going through and getting our flying lead all pinned into our ECU Master Black. So now I'm ready to get that laid into the truck. I'm probably not going to video much of that process until we're closer to being done with it, just because I have no idea how long it's going to take me. But we still have our PDM to wire. We're still waiting on a couple sensors to come in and connectors. So we'll get that laid in there and kind of mostly figured out, get a game plan going. We need to do our downpipe and our intercooler piping still. I need to order a throttle body along with our alternator relocation kit and alternator, get all that stuff done. And then hopefully the next video I make of this, we will be a lot closer to running, if not running. I'm going to put a few street miles on it, throw it on the dyno, see what kind of power it makes. Then we will take it to our local track for one of their Friday night test and tune deals. I'm not expecting it to go very fast immediately. I'm just going to kind of creep into the water, see how it does. I think I'm going to put 20 pounds worth of gate spring in it. I think the motor should be good for about 11 or 1200 horsepower. Nothing behind it is. The transmission might do it a couple times. The rear end probably won't, but we'll deal with that when we get there. So for now, I am going to leave you guys here. I'm going to start wiring this thing again. Hopefully next time you see it, it'll be a lot closer to running, if not running. Thanks to everybody that watches these. I'm not expecting to get huge or anything. I just kind of like making update videos about it. It's kind of fun. I've got a few local homies that heavily support what I do here, and I seriously appreciate you guys. You're the best. But if you want to like, subscribe, leave a comment, just kind of be in for the fuckery that is us trying to drag race a mini truck against all these Mustangs.